So I was thinking when Prem Sindhu was chanting, you know, as usual, it kind of starts off a little slow, ease our way, ease ourselves into it, and then, you know, kind of picks it up a notch. And then if you can really go deep in your heart, if you can go deep in your heart into the kirtan, then you can really break through the mind stream, through that thought continuity. And then you can really enter that space of kirtan. You can enter a different field. Suddenly that constant thought continuity, the mind which is based on this false self, this false idea of who we are, which is riddled with problems, which is a big problem, basically, pretty much a big problem. Suddenly we just break through that. It's just gone. Just, you know, it may even be just for a few moments, for a few seconds, or a few minutes, depending. You know, it's all individual. It's just gone. It's just, and then there's just pure, the holy name, this name that we're chanting, this mantra. It's just there. And that's it. That's all that's reverberating. You look around, that's all. That's out there. And it's not a scary situation. It's not fearful. You know, you go to people and you tell them, you know, that, you know, the problem is that you should stop thinking. You know, it's like a scary. What do you mean? They'll get frightened. You know. What do you mean? You know, I look back even in my own practice. I remember I had this realization where, you know, as you know, we chant in kirtan, Sankirtan. This is like the community gathering chanting. But then we also have our japa kirtan, where it's our solitary, you know, we do this, but it's without the music and we're just chanting on our own. And, you know, I had this realization. It was an early morning, dark outside. I wanted to really chant and just totally be absorbed in the moment, present, hearing. This was some years ago. And then I was actually frightened. It felt like being confined. It felt like being like in a prison. You know, when I looked at it analytically, when I looked at it like in a conceptual way, and I brought that up before here, how someone from outside, if they can look at this and they think about it conceptually, they're like, you're chanting the same thing over and over. It must be so boring, you know? It must be like torture, you know? It's like, what are you doing? It's like self-flagellation, like this, God, please, you know, accept my punishment, you know? Hare Krishna, you know? Deep brought that up before once. He grew up in the Hare Krishna movement. And it's kind of scary, but there was a time when the schools that we had in the Hare Krishna movement, like a form of punishment, like say you came to class late or whatever, you stole something, was, okay, chant more rounds, you know? It was like penance. You know, we have that in certain religions, penance. But of course, chanting Hare Krishna, it's not penance, you know, as you feel, there's not like a penance, you know, you're not like coming here on this rainy Thursday, like, it's actually blissful. It's a completely blissful experience, but the conceptualization of it, based on the thinking mind, can translate it, can interpret the situation as, oh, this is. But when we cross beyond that, when we enter a different dimension, which right now we're just talking about is very theoretical, but when you're in the kirtan, it's not theoretical, it's like you're there, you know? It's not like an idea anymore, it's like you're in that dimension. When that interpretation, when the mind's interpreting tendency and compulsion is somehow given a break, and the pure soul consciousness is accessed. You know, and then, and I had that realization as I was chanting, you know, it was dark, closing my eyes, and it was really feeling like a prison, you know, like, it was like, wow, what am I doing? I'm confining myself. And there was times when, yeah, chanting was very peaceful and stuff, and then it kind of hit me when I started to think about chanting in the context of time and space. Like, what am I, you know, like, this is like a confining thing. it's like I'm just in this darkness, and I'm completely excluding myself from all sensory perception and all sensory stimulation, and wow, it's like torture, you know. But that was that was before I kind of was in tune with this idea that, you know, you're not the mind. I was very heavily mind identified. You know, for me, chanting was very much a sense of, you know, as other people may build up a bank balance or whatever, consumer goods or whatever. You know, for me, my chant, my spiritual practice was like my ego. You know, so much of my ego was invested into that. You know, and then like all things where ego is invested, where, you know, as we talked about many times before, the mind is always seeking something, and it latches onto something for a while, but then after a while that thing becomes, you know, empty and shallow and hollow. And then there's like, oh, what's the next thing? But of course, we're not the mind. We're not the body, we're not the mind. We can observe that mind. We know that simply because we're here, and if you just take a moment, you can observe the thought stream or the mind stream, and you can see that you're different from it. When the mind stream takes you over, and it's always trying to take you over, then you're fully identified with it, and along with that is the fear and the pain that comes with identifying with the material form. As we're chanting, we're simply asked to just hear, that's all. No need to think about things or understand, analyze. Just hear, because by that activity of hearing, we are separating ourselves. Because that which hears, that thing that's here, that's out there, that does the hearing, which we rarely really experience, you know, that's the real us. And that thing, that other entity which just wants to be heard, which wants others to hear, and which wants to push its meanings and its ideas, right? That's the mind. You know, and as I've said before, even if we're able to just separate ourselves and just hear the mind, that's a tremendous advancement. Whenever we're able to just hear, we're coming back to ourself, back to our true self. As we hear, as we can hear the kirtan, and resist that which is trying to make noise, you know, that thing that wants to be heard, which is there, right? And even in the kirtan, even in the nicest kirtans, we may not fully be at that point, but it will diminish, right? We can naturally feel that that which wants to be heard is diminishing somewhat. It's probably diminishing 80, 90%. And immediately there's tremendous relief. Immediately it's like, immediately there's a great calm and stillness. I'm just thinking back of how, and it will probably happen today again, how, you know, we end the program and then it still takes a while to get the prasadam ready and everything, you know, the food. And I know how, you know, I've been to gazillions of spiritual programs, and a lot of times, I like this program as a very focused, you know, we're very focused on this practice, on the spiritual practice. We come and we're really focused. But a lot of times programs are more like open houses, and there's a lot of things going on, and people are kind of all over the place, you know. And then there's always anxiety when, you know, the exclamation point is always the dinner, you know. And a lot of times if you're really not present, right, and that there's some delay in the day, you know, you can see everyone's all fidgety and antsy, and you know what I mean, right? People are smiling, they know they have experiences, all, right? But I love it how here, and don't be guilty if you I never want to make people feel guilty or whatever, but I do have a feeling that here, you know, a lot of times stuff is getting ready and there's a delay, and I just have a feeling there's such a stillness and calm, you know, like people really don't care, right? People are just like, okay. And then sometimes I'm like, okay, come on, get up now, it's ready, let's go, we have to move to the next part of the program. Everyone is, you know, such a contrast to the running here and there, you know, everyone's running. The next thing, right? Gotta go to the next thing. here we are, somehow happy. So Deet will lead us into the next part of the kirtan. We'll just ask everyone again to simply just try to hear this mantra. And we'll just part with one last idea of how we might look at a room, we may look at the universe or the sky above. There's objects in this room, there's so many different objects. In the stars, when we look at the sky, there's so many stars and celestial bodies and objects. But when we're actually looking at the room, there's the objects in the room, but then there's the room. So there's the objects, but beyond that, there's that space. Okay. Right. Actually, it's all space. When you look at the objects, even look at our hand, it's all atoms, and the distance in between the atoms and the molecules and everything is like 99%. It's all emptiness, actually. Right? There's photons and electrons, and it's all actually space, but our minds assign, we form objects, everything into objects, and that's the way of the world. But as we go into this next kirtan, it may help if you're struggling a little bit to really get into it, to just think about beyond the objects that are in the room, that form our life situation, the different events. There's that space. There's life itself. There's the life, there's that space. Okay. And things will be very still. And all that there will be this mantra that we're hearing.